Hi, this is Richard Jacobs from my DUI attorney. I'm here today with Aaron Bortel. He's a 19-year criminal defense attorney out of the San Francisco area in California. How you doing, Mr. Bortel?
Good. Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Good. Thanks for taking the time today. I appreciate it very much.
All right. Well, let's get started.
Okay, no problem. My first question is what's your motivation to be a criminal defense attorney in general, and in particular, you seem to handle a lot of DUI cases. So I was wondering why you tend to focus on them.
Yeah, I've always been interested in defending people charged with crimes. I knew going into law school and when I was an undergrad that I wanted to do criminal defense work, and instead of doing what a lot of other attorneys do, civil attorneys, which is a lot of fighting over money, I want to help people, and I can really help a lot of people when they're being, you know, charged by the government, uh, committing a crime. And something like DUI is something that most people who drive a car and drink alcohol can relate to. Can everybody is a possibility if you do both of those.
Hmm.
So it's an area where a lot of science comes in. Dealing with people is important, but I think it all comes back to being able to help people who really, really need someone who can pay a lot of attention to them, care
Okay.
about them, and make a difference in their lives. Because DUIs can really impact your present employment, future employment, travel, all sorts of things.
Okay.
Um, so anyway, I like to help people, and I think I can help a lot of people doing DUI defense.
Right on. So, what type of DUI cases do you handle, and where do you practice? Is it just San Francisco, or is it all the North County area?
I practice throughout the San Francisco Bay Area, so all the counties. Most of my cases are in the Bay Area. In fact, usually it's 99% of my cases are here. Sometimes I'll go outside the Bay Area, but when I do that, I take a lot of time away from my Bay Area clients. So I try and keep it local. San Francisco is where my main office is. I've got a satellite office in Marin. I'm in Napa and Sonoma a lot, San Mateo a lot. I'm in the East Bay, Oakland. Get out to Pleasanton, Hayward, Fremont, Contra Costa County. I'm out in Walnut Creek, and I also go down to Santa Clara County.
Okay.
Um, I used to go to a number of other places, but again, time wise, I need to stay within the Bay Area, or else all my time is spent traveling.
Okay. And then, how about the people that you see? Is there any typical person that you end up representing? Do you see more first-time people, or men or women?
Um, Actually, I represent all walks of life. I've represented doctors, lawyers, nurses, educators, politicians, musicians. Um,
Huh.
you usually don't. Um, in fact, you never reveal who your clients are. Had one who recently died. It was one of the first cases I ever did when I was younger. It was more of a traffic matter, but I represented Clarence Clemens, who was a saxophonist for Bruce Springsteen and known and loved by people all over the world.
Huh.
But I represent athletes. There are a lot of professional athletes around the Bay Area that have gotten in trouble, and whether they're with the 49ers organization or job with them. And so once we're all done, no matter how the case comes out, they know what needs to be done to stay out of trouble, and they don't need to come back as a future client. I do
Okay.
represent a lot of second time offenders, multiple offenders, third, fourth, fifth, sometimes sixth. And I do a good number of felony DUIs. And those are the ones where you have four or more DUIs, or this is your fourth one,
Right.
or if there's an injury accident. And those get a lot more serious.
Okay.
Represented many people on those and gotten some very, very good results over the years.
So, of the clients that you see, do a lot of them have high BAC levels, or a lot of them close to that point oh 0.08 limit?
They're all over the place. In most cases, the closer you are to the legal limit, the better chance we have of winning your case. or getting charges reduced, keeping you driving. But I do get a lot of high blood alcohol levels. Sometimes the blood alcohol level is so high that it's kind of unbelievable. And we do a lot of different things to try and show that this is not a credible blood alcohol level. We retest blood samples. There's a disconnect in some cases where you'll have someone driving's not too bad. Maybe they got pulled over for a tail light, being out, and then they were given field sobriety tests.
Okay.
Did really well, and they blew into a machine, and they were 3 times the legal limit. And someone being, 0.24, 0.25, and balancing on one leg, no problem for 30 seconds, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
So the fact that someone has a high blood alcohol level, as reported by the police or by a lab after the blood is tested, does not always mean that that's the true blood alcohol level. And we have a lot of defenses that go along with the blood alcohol levels when they're inconsistent, or to show that they're not correct. If someone had a recent drink and they're not fully absorbed, the alcohol is not fully absorbed into their system,
okay,
they very well are probably lower than the number that comes out on a breath test or a blood test if they're still absorbing alcohol. And there's a lot of science to this theory, and basically what's going on is the absorption is still taking place, and a breath sample that's coming from the lungs is going to have more saturated alcohol in the lungs than a sample that said there would be a fully absorbed blood test or breath test a half hour, maybe an hour later, when the alcohol has fully absorbed throughout, all the water in the body and gone to all the extremities.
okay.
So it can be misleading, and people think, oh, I'm over the limit. That's it. I'm done. I'll get convicted. I don't need a lawyer. No, you never know, and so it's very important to at least consult with a lawyer, a DUI lawyer, someone who specializes in DUI defense, and then see where your defenses are and what your chances are.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of the phenomenon of mouth alcohol, and I've also heard of people being afraid when they're being pulled over. They might, I don't know, worry that their breath is bad. They'll chug some mouthwash, and they'll end up escalating their blood alcohol level by doing that.
Yeah, the mouth alcohol is something that is not always detected on a preliminary alcohol screening device at the machine that the police officers usually have when they pull you over. And because it's not always detectable, it can make your results look much higher. If you do a Listerine strip, if you just had some soy sauce, white Wonder Bread, things like that, these things have been tested and they've showed up. They've created a false positive, which makes it look like alcohol on a preliminary alcohol screening machine. For example, the machine that a lot of the police officers in the Bay Area use is called an alcohol sensor 4.
Okay.
And I've got one right here. You can see this. Hold it up to the camera. Basically, what happens here is they have to blow into this device, and there's a fuel cell inside of here. What there's not is what's called a slope detector, which is supposed to be able to detect mouth alcohol. And I'm not going to get all the science of that, but this preliminary machine may show you being a lot higher than you actually are. If you recently burped or regurgitated, you may be getting mouth alcohol. Sometimes people have dental pockets. There's all sorts of different types of reasons why mouth alcohol may be present.
All right. Do you see a lot of DUI cases due to drugs or mostly alcohol? And are the drug cases more complicated to defend?
We're starting to see a lot more marijuana cases. In fact, I talked to a number of people this week who were arrested for DUI drugs. the big difference, especially with marijuana, I believe it's a lot harder to prove. You don't have that .08 fine line. The DA's offices don't like the marijuana cases as much because they are tougher to prove. They like to have that number that a juror could really rely on, and they like to cling to that number. DUI drugs, there's so many different types of drugs. It is tougher to prove being under the influence of a drug than the alcohol because you don't get that number, but you do get scientific levels.
Okay.
And they can be very tough cases as well. I don't think the number, other than the marijuana cases, has gone up very much. What people need to be very careful of when they are smoking marijuana, and since in California every other person seems to now have a marijuana card,
Right.
is the time between when you smoke and when you drive. And there are different guidelines for this. I mean, the safest thing to do is don't drive the same day. But, make sure there are many, many hours between the smoking and the driving. I always tell people, if you can, wait at least 6 hours, 8 hours, just so that there's no question. If you do get arrested for DUI marijuana, it's something where if you tell the cop that you've smoked recently, they will definitely go after you, and they've got some good evidence to use against you. Because this goes to the impairment charge. And in California, we have two different charges. Vehicle Code Section 23152A, which is impairment, which basically says were you driving with the care and caution of a sober person, and 23152B of the Vehicle Code, which says that you were driving at or over a .08 blood alcohol level.
Okay. Well, what happens if let's say you smoke and then you don't even drive till the next day, but I don't know, you have a taillight out, you get pulled over, and what if they do a blood test and they find metabolites of marijuana in your system, but I mean you weren't impaired. Let's say it was 2 days ago or 3 days ago. What happens then?
Those are the cases that they won't. They shouldn't find the metabolites at a level where they will be able to successfully prosecute you. It's very important to if they do ask if you smoked, like I just said, you want to say that it was a long time ago, that it was the day before, if that's what it was, and you should be okay. But yeah, you got marijuana stays in your system, as most people have heard, for a month or 2 months. It can stay there for a long time, but to show a certain level is what they need to do. And there's that, and then there's also the impairment charge, which is part of it. But if they can show bad driving and poor field sobriety test, sometimes they try to go off you, fight. And unfortunately, in those cases, you will need a lawyer to fight for you, because if you try and fight these by yourself, you got a fool for a lawyer.
Okay, so you mentioned that you do DUI cases in San Francisco and a bunch of different counties, and I know that where you are, there's like the wine country, there's downtown, and there's quieter areas. So, is there any difference in the DUI laws by county, or are there a difference in the people you see, or anything unusual?
Yeah, we have a lot of counties here in the Bay Area, and the wine country is definitely a very popular place for people to go, whether they live around here or whether they're from out of town. The Napa and Sonoma are considered the wine country. They're different counties, different courthouses. The Sonoma courthouse is in Santa Rosa. I'm up there, seems like at least once or twice a week, and same with Napa. I was just in Napa yesterday morning, working on a couple of cases. And Napa is very strict. The penalties there are stricter than most places. The strictest one in the Bay Area is usually Santa Clara County, but Napa, I would say, is a close second. On certain cases, even more strict. Napa can be like this because they have a jury pool made up of people that are very anti DUI. I mean, no one's in favor of driving over the limit and doing any favors for anybody who is.
Right.
But in Napa, they've got a lot of two-lane roads. They get a lot of head-ons. They get a lot of people from out of town, and locals get hurt.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not a big place, so that's why it's very strict. And there's a lot of places like that all over the country. But there's so much alcohol and so much drinking and wine tasting going on in Napa that they are very strict.
Huh.
Yeah, penalty wise, everywhere is different. I practice DUI law in every county in the Bay Area, so I'm very familiar with the different rules or types of penalties that the DA's offices and the courts are looking for. What's interesting right now is with the overcrowding that we are seeing in the jails because of new California law. People who get DUIs who would normally, as a penalty, have to do a short amount of time on a first offense, maybe on a sheriff's work program, or maybe a day or two, or a little more than that, depends on the case and the county. But I'm seeing those penalties decreased. In fact, just in Napa, I had a client who recently got convicted of a DUI. This client was well over the legal limit, and instead of having to do a day of the sheriff's work program, they basically had them come in, do a quick signing of papers, and leave at the jail.
Huh.
They're trying to run them through as quickly as they can and make room for the people coming back from the state prisons. They don't have the room. So
Okay.
I've been seeing a lot of that lately.
Right. I certainly wouldn't say DUI is no big deal, because they're not going to do anything to you. But I understand what you mean. Okay.
Yep.
So in the counties that you deal with, do you ever deal with like immigration issues and DUI? If someone is arrested and convicted of DUI, does it affect their immigration status? If they're illegal, if they're not legal?
Yeah, we deal with that a lot, especially here in the Bay Area. I've got a lot of clients from different parts of the world. I get a lot of clients from India who are here working for a number of the Silicon Valley companies, or just the dot-commers, and they're here on work visas, green cards, and these are concerns. It does mess with travel, so we've got to look out for not just convictions, but the allegations that could happen on convictions. A high blood alcohol level can make it tough to travel. One of the places that you can't travel to if you have a DUI or an alcohol-related, driving offense is Canada. And since 9/11, they've had our criminal and DUI, DMV records, and so Canada will not let you in if you have one of these convictions or through the courts or suspensions from DUI for an alcohol-related driving offense. A lot of things that clients will call me for are expungements, where we will get the conviction dismissed either before probation is over or sometimes once probation is over, and that helps clean up the record. The immigration attorneys are encouraging people to do that to help with the immigration. If you're trying to get a green card or renew a green card, you don't want to be doing that while you're on probation.
Right.
And so sometimes we'll do an early termination of probation if someone's on it for that purpose. And most of the courts are fairly receptive to that being a good reason. But yeah, I mean it's a concern, and countries are getting stricter and stricter about it. I had a client from India recently who was stuck there for 3 or 4 weeks, so I had to get him a lot of different information to show that he was not convicted of this case. It was a pending case. There was a lot of confusion. He couldn't get back here for a while. Eventually he did, and we got a real good result with the case, but it was very scary for him. So immigration is, if you're dealing with any type of immigration, you should not be trying to handle a case by yourself. you should have a specialized DUI attorney.
Has anyone been deported because of a DUI conviction?
Um, I can't recall that happening on a first DUI conviction. I have a client who I represented many years ago. Um, he had other convictions that he was dealing with. Um, DUI conviction was not the big problem. If it is a serious DUI, if it's a family DUI, if you've got an inmate involved, or multiple DUIs, then you're looking at definitely the chance of deportation.
Huh.
And even on a first DUI, the paperwork that you would fill out if you got convicted would say, and your attorney would have to admonish you that it resulted in immigration. So it's something that we're always concerned with.
How about cases where someone's sleeping in their car? They either have the keys in the ignition or they don't, or those kind of. You ever run into those?
Oh yeah, California requires volitional movement. Um, there are some states that just require control of the vehicle. California, they have to have driving. So if you're asleep in your car, they have to prove that you were driving. And if you don't admit it, they have no one who saw you drive. It's much tougher for them to prove driving. Very often what a police officer will do is they'll claim that they touched the hood, or they'll touch the hood and say it's warm, so you must have been driving recently. Um, that's, if you're not admitting driving, it's a much tougher case for them to prove. The most winnable cases for DUI attorneys, especially the good ones, are the no driving defenses,
Okay.
where they can't, because driving is an element. You have to be driving a motorized vehicle, and if they can't prove driving, they can't prove their case. So
Okay.
it's when I hear no driving defense, I know I've got a very good chance of winning the case.
Okay. All right. So let's say I'm driving. I've had one drink or many drinks. I'm in the process of being pulled over. What should I do in my interaction with the police to help me or hurt me? What should I do?
The first thing the cops want to see you do, when they approach you, they want to make sure that you are not a danger. So to keep them at ease, you know, have your window rolled down and have your hands on the steering wheel where they can see them. They'll see that. They don't see you hiding things or looking around in your glove compartment. They'll come up. They'll be a little more calm, and you want to be polite with them. You want to pass the attitude test, but you don't want to give them too much information. It's very important to know that you are not required to do any of the field sobriety tests, and you're not required to blow into the preliminary alcohol screening device that they may have with them. Once and only if they've arrested you, then you're required to do a chemical test in California, and that's either a blood test or a breath test. And that's, some counties, they'll be able to do that on the side of the road after they've cuffed you and arrested you. But in most of the counties in the Bay Area, they will take you to a police station or a jail, which is where that will be done, or sometimes a blood test is done at a hospital. If
Okay.
the most important thing is just to be polite and respectfully decline to do their tests. Because what you're doing by doing their tests is you're giving them more and more information to use against you. Telling them that you have a friend who's a lawyer who said you should never do the tests. They can write that down. That's something that I like to be able to use.
Okay.
Because the prosecution is trying to do is use this as an admission of guilt. So you really don't want to give them any information to use against you.
What if they assume that you're going to do it? Like they say, "Sir, step out of the car." You step out, and they say, "I'm going to need you to, I don't know, walk this line." And you say to them, then, "Hey, I'm not comfortable doing this. I decline." Or what would you say? Literally, what would you say?
I would say, especially if I know I've had too much to drink and I know I'm probably in trouble, I would say, officer, I, respectfully decline to do any field sobriety tests.
Okay.
Yep, that's what I do.
Okay. Yeah, because I imagine it's one thing to say refuse, but if they're acting very authoritative and they're assuming that you're going to do it, how would you respond? That's why I asked you. So, but okay.
Yeah, it's especially important to understand that if once you've been arrested, if you refuse to do that breath test or the blood test, that if it's a first DUI offense, you're going to lose your privilege to drive for at least a year.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean a restricted license. That means no driving for a year. So if you need to get the kids to school every day, or if you need to commute to work, or if you need to rent cars, whatever you need to do, you drive for a living, you will not be doing that for a full year if you refuse the test. And a lot of people from other states will come out here and they'll be up in the wine country and they'll refuse a test because, say, they're from Texas and they've been told in Texas that's what you do.
Right.
You don't take the test. And the cops will explain it, and arguments happen, or people they don't believe the laws, they don't believe the police officers, and they end up losing their license for a year.
Okay. So the main differentiator is before the arrest versus after the arrest. Just want to be clear.
That's right.
Okay. Very good. So what kinds of help can you give to people accused of DUI? Can you help reduce jail time or fines or ignition interlock? Or what kinds of things typically can you help to mitigate?
What I basically do is when someone hires me, they're going to be told and they will see from the first phone call that I'm going to take care of everything. You hire me, I handle your case. It's not someone right out of law school or someone from another law firm or a junior associate. You hire me, I represent you. From the first intake phone call or in-person consultation, I'm representing you all say, I'm going to court, I'm doing motions, I'm dealing with DMV, doing the trial. If there's a trial in the case, you hire me, you get me. What I can do for people depends on the type of case. What we're always trying to do in every case is win in court and win a DMV. If we're unable to do that, we're looking to try and get charges reduced and minimize penalties. In regards to your driver's license, very often I'm able to minimize the amount of suspension that you may get. I've got a very good working relation with the DMVs in all over the Bay Area, and I've known a lot of these hearing officers since before they were hearing officers, when they were clerical staff in these offices. So I get a lot of respect in these places. I know the supervisors, and I'm going to get you the best result I can. I'm going to try and win the DMV hearing, and if I can't, we're going to minimize any potential driving suspension. In court, there are all sorts of penalties. The monetary penalties are very tough to do much with unless you get the actual charges reduced. But potential jail or sheriff's work program time, we can get that. You know what? We should probably do the segment over.
All right, so this may be an impossible question to answer, but what level of success have you had in mitigating some or all the nastiness of a DUI charge?
Again, it depends on the case. I've won cases. I think I win as much, if not more, than anybody around here. I've had a lot of success with DMV. I think I have more success than most attorneys do with DMV. Having done this for almost 20 years and doing exclusively DUI defense gives me an advantage because this is all I'm focusing on. New laws, new defenses. I go to conferences that are in different areas of the state, different states. I'm on different listservs, California, nationally. I have contacts in most of the states. I know most of the top DUI attorneys in most of the other states. And and it helps just practicing DUI law. So I had a case last year that was a felony DUI where we had a broken ankle, we had major cuts. It was something that was a clear felony DUI. I was not able to make the whole thing go away. Surprise. But understanding how felony DUI law works, I was able to get the charge at a preliminary hearing reduced to a misdemeanor.
Hmm.
And my client had to do a couple days on the sheriff's work program. In the end, he didn't do any.
Wow.
But yeah, it's success is going to depend on the case. The attorneys that do the harder cases, the multiple offense DUIs, the injury accident DUIs, there are very few of us that actually do those and do them well. Those ones are usually much tougher. If you're just doing first DUIs, and you're getting just 08s and 09s, you're probably going to have a higher success rate.
True. Okay.
But I find that the prosecutors all over the Bay Area have a lot more respect for the attorneys who really know the DUI law and do the serious DUIs.
So what have you learned? You've been doing this for about 20 years. I mean, what have you learned about people's behavior and their reaction to being arrested for DUI? What human insights have you gained into dealing with this and so many people?
I've learned a lot of things. One of the things is that there are those dark sides to many of us that we never knew existed. That they can come out when you've had way too much to drink, and people just need to be aware of that. We live in a society where there's alcohol available everywhere. If someone has a serious drinking problem, it's not just going to go away because they got a DUI conviction. There are people that need to go into programs. I've helped a lot of people get into programs and turn their lives around. But, putting someone in jail has never been the answer. Everyone I've seen, not everyone, but most of the people I've seen that have had to go to jail over the years for very serious cases,
Okay.
usually the multiple offenses and then the injury accidents or the death cases, going to jail doesn't change them. What changes them are programs, counseling. I think getting back to your question,
Yeah.
what have I seen about what have I learned about people and DUIs? I think that what I've really learned, and I learned this pretty quick, is that this can happen to anybody. You can be out there and not even expecting to drive. Someone else is the designated driver. Something. I use examples a lot from cases I've had. I had a client who was out with a couple of friends of his. The friends were boyfriend, girlfriend, and he was just out. And he was the drinker, and one of them was the driver. And they got the boyfriend, girlfriend got in a fight, and she wanted my client to take her home, and he was just being a good friend.
Right.
Well, lost his job, a very good job. He had a special license. He had a license that was a Class A license, so he couldn't drive for his company anymore.
Hey.
That just, it can happen to anyone, anytime. I've got another client who just picked up a second DUI. He didn't learn his lesson the first time, unfortunately, and he kept drinking, and he wasn't intending to drive. But for some reason, instead of getting a ride or walking like he intended to do, he was so drunk that he just grabbed his keys and went. Another client just recently here in San Francisco was just looking to move their car. They walked to where they drank, they walked home, and they were so drunk that they thought, oh, got to move the car, can't get the ticket or can't get it towed. Accident, hit and run, DUI. We actually got a real good result in that case, but it can happen to anybody. The best advice I can give if you're going out drinking, you just make sure there's absolutely no way you can get behind the wheel. And the best thing that you can do to avoid a DUI for those types of crazy situations
Yeah.
is just not drink to excess. I mean, the only safe place is on a deserted island with no vehicles at all. It's just cars, drinking. Um, for some people, they just don't mix.
Okay. After the whole human insights type thing, is there a particular story that you hear over and over and over from the people that come to see you?
I hear there's no way my blood alcohol level could be that high. I hear that constantly. Um, people will tell the police said nothing to drink, one drink, two drinks is the most popular
Right.
answer. Um, but no, it happens a lot, and very often they didn't have as much to drink as the number, and that can be because they're still absorbing alcohol. Um, but also, what people don't realize is the way that these drinks are measured.
Mm.
Most beer is close to, if not over now, 5%. Almost all the micro beers are, and some are 7, 8, 9%. A glass of wine is measured at 4 or 5 ounces. If you look at the size of a wine glass, some of these glasses are 16, 18 inches or ounces, I should say. And when someone gives you a pour, they don't want to make it look like a small pour, so they'll give you say 7, 8 ounces, or sometimes more in a glass of wine, or that's what people pour for themselves.
Right.
And the alcohol content has gone up so much in recent years that if you've got a 7 ounce, 8 ounce glass of wine that's 14 or 15% alcohol, that's going to be like potentially 2+ drinks.
Mm.
And if you had 2 of those and you don't weigh very much, you could be way over the limit, because that could be like 4 or 5 drinks. And if you haven't had much to eat, it absorbs pretty quickly. Then you're looking at being well over the limit if it's all recent drinking before the driving. So
Okay.
I think that I didn't have that much to drink is the most popular, the most common thread or statement that I hear from clients.
Okay. Mm. Yeah, I noticed that even a beer, the standard quote unquote beer is 12 ounces, but pint glasses can be either 16 or 20 ounce. You've got long neck beers, you got all kinds of stuff. So just like you mentioned with wine, you could easily have had 2 beers, but you actually had 4 because of the
Yep.
pour, the glass size, whatever it could be. So it's a good point.
Well, I remember when I was in college, the popular drink was the Long Island iced tea.
Right.
There are so many different versions of those, and some of the names are names that I wouldn't say in front of my children. I hear them. I know them now because I've had enough clients say this is what I had. These are drinks that where a normal drink will have an ounce, ounce and a half, maybe 2 ounces of alcohol, of hard alcohol. We're talking about now 3, 4, 5 times that much.
Mm.
And that can get you, depending on your weight, to twice, 3 times the legal limit, depending on a number of factors. But you really got to watch what you're drinking, because that stuff can really creep up on you.
Do you feel the current DUI punishments are too harsh? Or are they too lax, and why?
I would say it depends on what part of them we're looking at. Having to do a school, it's not fun for anybody. The schools themselves, there's a lot of good stuff you can get out of the school. The length of the school, I don't think makes that much of a difference. Some counties are too harsh, others aren't. Some counties need to look at different levels of DUIs. For instance, Marin County will not they don't negotiate for a wet or a dry reckless. That's ridiculous. They end up having too many cases go to trial because of that. and cost taxpayers way too much money to do these trials. They should have different levels. I believe that what we're starting to see work, and I think where the government is going to go with this, and they're testing it right now, is the ignition interlock. And that's where if you've been convicted of a DUI, multiple DUI, in some cases, there's 4 test counties in California that are doing this now on first DUI. That would be Alameda County, Sacramento, Los Angeles, and Tulare. They require an ignition interlock device be installed in your car for you to be driving after a month of no driving. And you have to have that for at least 5 months.
Right.
So what that does is when you get in the car, you have to blow into it to be able to start the ignition. And depending on which device you have, which there's all sorts of different companies out there, you have to at a certain time later blow into it, and after 30 or 45 minutes later blow into it again. So those are things that I think will help with recidivism. I think that where they're way too restrictive is they punish people with, jail or sheriff's work program, DUI schools, huge fines, insurance ends up going up, you're on probation, which again doesn't allow you to get to Canada because of the conviction. They've got all these strict penalties, and then on the license, after you can't drive for usually 30 days, they'll let you get a restricted license.
Right.
That restriction is too strict because people, if they're going to be on a restricted license, it needs to allow more than just what it does. What it does is it allows to and from work while you're working,
right,
and to and from your DUI school. Yet, I have clients calling me up saying, wait, I need to get my kids to school.
Yeah.
And that's not allowed. I need to go to the doctors. I need to go to my therapist. I need to go to school. That's not allowed. In Sacramento DMV, which controls this, there are no excuses here. There's no loopholes, and that's wrong. They need to be able to expand that restriction. It's really hurting people, and there's absolutely no reason to. Someone on a restricted license should be able to do whatever they want. You can accept things like going out and drinking. I mean, if you want to set a time limit on a restricted license,
right,
that might be, but I think what's going to happen eventually, and they've done this in other states, is California will eventually go to interlock for everybody in every county on a first DUI.
Really? Okay.
I really think that's what's going to happen.
So what are the pros and cons of hiring a private lawyer like yourself versus a public defender versus defending yourself?
Well, defending yourself is never the way to go. There's just too much at stake, whether it be penalties, probation, your license, hiring an experienced DUI attorney, an attorney who specializes in just does DUI defense, will, in almost all cases, get you the minimum penalty possible. You really, if you can afford an attorney, need to consider hiring a private attorney versus a public defender. One, you may not qualify for the public defender. Two, they do all sorts of criminal law. Some are good, but most doing the DUIs aren't that experienced. But they don't do the DMV hearing, and they don't know how all that works. They're not going to be able to walk you through and help you if you lose your license, get it back as soon as possible. They'll walk into court with a caseload of 10, 20, 30 cases, whereas a private attorney, will have one, maybe two, sometimes one more, but you need that individual attention. That's very important. It's if you can afford the attorney, hire the right attorney, and you have a right. You have a constitutional Sixth Amendment right to an attorney of your choice, and you need to use that.